Hello everyone. It is highly likely that you are very familiar with this particular species of herring, but it is possible that you have not personally caught any of them. This video will teach you how to catch hundreds of tons of herring like that, so I invite you to come explore with me today. Let's get going, shall we? It was not until the 1950s that Lewis and Harris were able to gain access to contemporary circular citation marking in a business setting. The employment of ring nets, also known as round nets, is one method that is utilized in Scotland for the purpose of catching herring in a more limited capacity. Circle fishermen have been fishing since 1830, and as time went on, they developed competence with the new kind of fishing. Eventually, they pushed out into deeper seas offshore with a couple of boats. Once they had identified a school of herring, which they initially achieved by monitoring specific indicators. One of the beautiful fish moored herself in a location that was comfortable for her, and stood still while clinging to it tightly. One end of the net, while the other boat takes a break by going around the herring grounds in a circle, bringing the other end of the net back to the boat that is standing still. After that, both teams make their way onto a boat together, where they fish and drag the net onto the ship. It is possible to carry out the activity an unlimited number of times until there are sufficient citations to accompany the individual to school. The engines will be presented, and then they will be finished, together with contemporary boats that have been purpose-built and intricate machinery to allow for. It has been determined by the fishermen where the citation is located, which will assist fishermen in using deeper nets when fishing on the high seas. Since the outset, herring fishermen who use nets have been adamantly opposed to fishing with ring nets. This is due to the fact that it kills schools of herring and immature fish, and the abandoning of unwanted dead fish is detrimental to normal fishing operations. In addition, the fisherman said that the herring was harmed by the operations of the enormous net, which also frightened him away, which ultimately led to him running away. When the time comes, the fisherman's means of subsistence will be eradicated. People who advocate for ring net fishing claim that anyone has the right to take part in that type of fishing because it is a universally accepted practice. Additionally, trawling is a way of fishing that is not only more effective but also more cost-efficient. This is due to the fact that the income is significantly larger. There is no doubt in my mind that they are totally correct in their assertion that the citation marking profession will never be negatively affected by ring flipping. It is important to note that this is not a tow net, because it is not being pulled behind the boat. As a result of this, a heated conversation arose over the advantages of fortification, fishing, and buildings were proposed to both promote and oppose the behaviors. Siege fishing was declared unlawful by a Congressional Moral Act in 1851. Nonetheless, the tribes that engaged in the practice defied the law and continued to engage in trawling. Despite the fact that a number of fishing networks were established, the act was unable to be put into effect in 1867, and it was ultimately abolished. For a considerable amount of time, the use of trap nets for fishing was primarily restricted to the southwest region, specifically the Kintyre and Clyde regions. On occasion, they traveled to Minches, which was located further north, but they were met with severe hostility at first. There were fishermen in the Loch Fyne region who utilized both ring and drift nets. However, by the late 19th century, drift net fishing had become the more common kind of fishing. While the ring net is expanding, there has been a decline in the Loch Fyne area. The number of Seine fishermen at the beginning of the 20th century was significantly lower than the value of the catch that was caught by the military fishermen who worked in the Seine. The modest Loch Fyne boat, which was utilized extensively in the southwest, was a vessel that featured a huge design not to be missed. There is a prohibition on construction in the areas of Campbelltown, Tabert, Ardrishagan, and Verreri, among other places. In the year 1902, it was approximately 97 pounds. The length of these boats had expanded from 20/25ths of a foot to 25/30ths of a foot by the time the 1870s rolled around. Initially, they were open boats. Following that, we were partially furnished. And then we were ultimately completely furnished. The length of boats in Loch Fyne was quite short prior to the outbreak of First World War. The employment of trap nets is the primary method of fishing in conventional citation fisheries, which cover ranges up to 40 feet. Chains, weights, and peaks are used to anchor these clouds in spots close to the coast, frequently in close proximity to archerfish that are spawning. The number of trapping nets that have been employed and the overall capture have both reduced over the course of the past 2 decades. Yet the effectiveness of these nets has not changed and has remained the same. When it comes to capturing citations that are produced in the spring, marked nets are the primary technique. During the time that it is anticipated that the extract would commence production, they are strung, and they will continue to be employed for as long as it is economically feasible. A number of parameters, including the depth and condition of the seabed, are taken into consideration while designing these network groups for specific locations. The traditional method of anchoring them involves using long pieces of wooden pulp. However, floating trap nets are also utilized in certain regions. The majority of herring collections are of a lesser size. However, the largest ones can house up to 15 to 20 tons of herring. The mesh nets that are used in this region have a spacing of between 12 and 13 millimeters, and a widespread consensus is that they are not considered to be fishing equipment. By selecting the filter, we are able to capture quotes from individuals of diverse ages, sizes, genders, and phases of reproduction. Small herrings measuring approximately 10 centimeters in length are able to be caught in these rings. The information that we needed for our extraction endeavor was gathered through close coordination with fishermen from the surrounding area. Around the beginning of the 1980s, there was a network that was divided in the Sea of Islands. The number of fishing methods used for spawning citations has decreased since that time, which has resulted in a decrease in the number of net catch evaluations. Furthermore, catch per unit of force CPUE does not appear to be diminishing, and it appears to be dependent on the quantity of the spawning stock in the Bothnian Sea. This is despite the fact that it has decreased. The Islands Research Institute made the decision to purchase 2 smaller sift chains in 2019 as a response to the decrease in commercial trap fishing. These devices, which are employed for research reasons, were created in close proximity to known breeding areas in the interior archipelago. Together with the island's Marine Fisheries Action Group, the ILI Center, Southwest Finland, and the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund, EMFF, are providing financial assistance to this initiative. The objective is not only to continue collecting samples of spawning herring, but also to teach students at Livia College the information and skills that are acquired by professional fishermen. The herring is a species of fish that inhabits the middle water layer, or the midwater layer. In the daytime, they eat on or in close proximity to the sea floor. In the same manner as plankton, they rise to the surface at dusk, dive halfway about midnight, and then return to the surface shortly before sunrise. Passive fishing is accomplished through the use of drift nets. To catch the herring, you first cast the net, and then wait for it to swim into the net. Because of the size of the mesh that they are welcomed by, it is designed to capture adult fish by their gills, which is why it is also known as a gill net. However, it is designed to allow immature fish to swim through and escape. The Dutch were responsible for a considerable development of this fundamental technology during the rise of their Visaya group, which was a great fishery in the 15th century. The origins of this technique have been forgotten throughout the course of time. In 1416, they documented that fishing nets were used to catch the first huge herring. This event took place at Horn. During the process of developing the herring bus, an early factory ship that collected, gutted, salted, and stored fish on board, large nets were required. This allowed them to take advantage of the herring beds that were located off the shores of England and Scotland. Along the west coast of Scotland, drift trawlers were gradually phased out and replaced by purse-seine vessels, beginning in the middle of the 19th century. Seine nets, a technology that was pioneered in the United States, have replaced them in the North Sea and other areas as they have extended to the east coast. Seine nets have also replaced them in other areas. A fishery that is more productive and less sustainable has been established as a result of each piece of development. Drifters were still widely utilized by fleets operating on the east coast of Scotland and the United Kingdom until the 1950s and 1960s. They had a complete understanding of the long-term danger that outdated shoal-finding technologies posed to their means of subsistence. A greater degree of precision, whereas fishing nets continued to become increasingly haphazard. Having said that, it is always challenging to disagree with business profits. Even though drift nets are a sustainable method of catching herring, the lines of nets are getting longer and longer all the time, since herring populations are decreasing. The constraints that were formerly imposed by human endurance have been transcended by mechanical towing solutions. The drift nets used in other fisheries across the world are significantly longer, reaching distances of up to 30 miles or more, and they create walls of death that are indifferent to any species. There were rumors that the villagers of Canny Pabby had a deal with their ferryman who came from the mainland of Harris. In this manner, he arranged his sail in a particular manner as a pre-planned signal, signaling that he was transporting a customs official on board. It is hypothesized that this made it possible for the Pabby people to take the necessary evasive action. The fact that Pabby whiskey was renowned for its high quality ultimately proved to be their undoing. The estate was resolute in its mission to rectify the situation of the people of Pabby by compelling them to make their living from commercial fishing. As an alternative to the land, and under the guise that the inhabitants needed to be instructed in fishing techniques, additional families from Harris were inducted into Scalpy and the United States Army Uniform Army.